Another week in the books for college football. Let me welcome you to the Perfect Season Podcast, College Football Edition. I'm Alex Frank, better known as Frankie. Anthony Fiorentino joining me on this Monday, October 10th, 2022. Week 6 in the books, Anthony. Uh, Nothing short of great. And we're going to recap
Ugly.
all the games from this past week. Headlined, of course, by um, the top, or formerly the top-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, barely squeaking one out against Texas A&M. And then we're going to look ahead to this week where we have 6 top 25 matchups on the horizon, including a showdown in Knoxville that could be the biggest game in the state of Tennessee since
I'm
1999.
I'm
I'll explain why.
I'm
All
calling
right,
it.
Anthony, where are we starting from week 6?
Do you want to
Where are
start
we
with the
starting?
bad? You want to start with the bad and go into the good, or start with the good and go into the bad?
Let's start with whatever the biggest takeaway for you is.
Oklahoma's terrible. You know, you lose Dylan Gabriel to a very dirty hit, and then you go into the Red River Showdown. You've won winners of 4 in a row, and then you get blanked by Texas. Texas is one of those teams that's scary when they're good, and they're hot right now. Texas is nationally ranked 22, just below Cincinnati. But my biggest takeaway is Oklahoma, they need to fix what they have. They're not good.
That was a drubbing.
That was
That's the
like that was like watching paint dry.
that was their third straight loss. They're now 3-3 on the season. They're not even close to going
They're
to the
0
college
and
football
3.
playoff.
They're 0 and
They're not
3
even at
in
this
the
point.
division.
Yeah, 0-3 in conference play, which is just astounding. Um, Against this Texas team who they beat last year, 54-48 in that memorable
What
Red
a
River
showdown.
showdown. Um,
I mean, that's when
when
you also had Lincoln Riley last year. You had um why can't I think of his name?
you had Lincoln Riley, you had Spencer Rattler for the first part of the season, you had Caleb
And then
Williams,
you had
who
Caleb Williams, that's who it was.
um,
But now
And
you
then
have
and then you look at a guy like Quinn Ewers, whose first game back from injury, he goes 21 to 31 for 289 and 4 touchdowns. They give up 130 rushing yards to Bijan Robinson, almost 300 yards total to Texas. I mean, this game was a whitewashing from the
it was
beginning.
over. It was over when it started. I'll say that.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't see the game, so I mean, if you want to say that, that's fine.
I
But
saw the
my
first.
thing is, like, this is Oklahoma's first shutout. Sorry about that. Oklahoma's first shutout since 1998. Sorry about that video playing in the background. Oklahoma's first shutout since 1998. That's the first time they've been shut out since 1998. And I just think look at um when we look at what's wrong with them, like, obviously, not having Dylan Gabriel hurts. I mean, they used
If
they
Dylan
used five
Gabriel,
five different players in this game through a basket, including Davis Vile, who was 6 of 12 for 38 yards.
that's just for him to go 6 of 12, 50% completion rate, 36 yards, no touchdowns, a couple picks. It's time they give someone else a shot if Dylan Gabriel's not ready for if Dylan Gabriel's not ready this week. You're going to struggle this week. I don't even know who they have, but they're going to lose. Hate to say it. And I know it's Brent Venables' first year as a head coach, but their change will have to be made.
Um, so Oklahoma this week will play.
Oklahoma
They are home against Kansas.
and
That's not a
Kansas is one of those teams where they've surprised me. They're 5-1.
yeah.
Recently
They're
lost
5-1,
to recently lost to TCU, the Horned Frogs.
and it's not like they're losing badly. I mean, they lost by 7 to TCU, who's
I
now up to
was rooting for
13.
TCU. I was really pulling for TCU honestly because I always like seeing I wouldn't say it's an upset, but I always like seeing someone different win, like a TCU wasn't projected to win that game and TCU won, but I'm happy they won. someone different for once. But now we're switching. Now we're cooking with gas, cooking with fire. You know, you're going to switch to some of the good games that were actually good. Clemson, our school, one of our favorite schools,
Yep.
nationally ranked top 4 again.
Somehow, some
And
way, yeah, they're ranked number 4.
they
Um,
struggled early against Boston College in the first half, but in the
yeah,
second
which I
half,
mean,
everything started to click in the second half. Ugalele throwing the deep ball, got a couple touchdowns in there, couple big plays on defense, some sacks. Xavier Thomas is back. Now, when you go up to FSU this weekend, I will be there.
yeah,
And
that's going to be a heck of a game.
Clemson is one of the teams that is most healthy returning back. So I expect
I mean,
a dominant game.
I don't. I mean, it's on the road, and this is, I mean, a much better Florida State team. But as far as the game last week, Anthony, really incredible defensive performance. They held Boston College to just 34 yards rushing, and then DJ Uiagalelei with 3 touchdown passes, all in the second half. So really a good job. Excuse me,
He's
of putting the game away.
when it's much
And
needed.
yeah, but my thing is with Clemson, they got to start. They got to stop. Excuse me, getting off to these slow starts in
Yeah,
the first
that's
half.
it. That's also like them getting off the slow starts is like USF. They get off the slow starts, and yeah, they're a second half team, but they didn't get off to a slow start Saturday against Cincinnati, which I did not see
No, they
that game. I
didn't.
was at work.
We'll get into that at the end.
Yeah, and then we got
But
Georgia back at number 1.
that's not surprising.
I mean,
Um,
you got
I think they're
Ohio State
clearly the
at
best team
2.
in the country.
Georgia.
Very much so.
Now, I don't know who Georgia has this week, but let's go through the top 25. We got Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2. Ohio State's one of those teams that's scary good, but
I think they
they're
have the most complete offense in the country.
they're one. How do I say it nicely to them? They're a trap game away from losing.
Well, I don't know. I don't see them
I
losing
mean,
much this year.
I still got them making the college football playoff, but I don't see them going undefeated.
I don't think anybody's going to beat them except maybe Michigan. But I just think
You got
when
Michigan
you
at
look
5.
at Ohio State, like here's the thing, Anthony. Ohio State is the most complete offense. I think they're the most explosive offense in the country.
Yeah,
And not only is it Jackson Smith and Jigba this year, um, not only is it Jackson Smith and Jigba this year, it's also Marvin Harrison Jr. So they now
yeah.
have 2 legitimate wide receivers. Their running game is solid with Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams. They
They
have 2-headed
have
monster in the backfield. Their defense is playing well. And every time they take the field, they're just blowing teams out. So, like, you can
because they
say they're
have
primed to you can say they're primed to get upset. Excuse me for that video playing in the background. You can say they're primed for an upset. I don't see it.
Iowa, Penn State, Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, and Michigan.
Penn State
And
will be a tough game.
Penn State's 10. Penn State's nationally ranked 10th.
But here's the thing about Penn State, and you know this. Every time they get up to whether it be 10, 2, anywhere in the top 10,
They choke.
not only do they lose a game, they then just completely fall off a cliff.
Yeah. I mean, Penn
Like
State's
this is not a program that I'm going to buy into until they beat Ohio State on their home turf, which they could,
they
or
can or beat Ohio
they,
State in
they
Ohio
go into
State.
Ann Arbor this week. That's not going to be an easy game. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, because
So,
Michigan, my cousin goes to Michigan, he's been to a couple of games. Michigan's one of those tough stadiums to play in. Like Michigan, their fans are wild, their fans are crazy. Everything's cool about it. I'm iffy about Michigan, but I like them because I like the atmosphere, what their fans bring. That's what I like about them, but Michigan's also one of those teams that sneakily could make the top four, could make the college football playoffs. Like you got so many good teams that could sneak their way in, like Michigan, Tennessee, maybe in Oklahoma State.
That's the thing. It's like there are teams in the top 10 right now
There's
that you're
so
not
many
even
good
really
teams.
paying. You're not even paying attention to. Like
You
Oklahoma
got
State is quietly number 7. Have we mentioned a word about them yet this season? No.
what about
Have we
Tennessee?
mentioned? Well, Tennessee, we could after this week. I mean, and you
Tennessee's
look at
gonna
what
pull the
Tennessee.
upset on Bama.
They very well could. I mean, Hendon Hooker's
It's
playing
in
very good
Tennessee.
football.
Game day's
It's
back
in
in
it's
Tennessee.
in Knoxville, but don't forget Nick Saban's never lost at Tennessee as head coach of Alabama. Like that's going to be a massive game. Abby, my sister, and her friends are going to be in Knoxville. I don't think they're going to the game, but they will be in Knoxville for game day. So that's going to be a good time there. So
that's gonna be a good game. I mean, you
I think
got
it is.
that. Now,
And
here's another team that's really snuck their way into the top 10. Now, going into November, one of these not bowl games, the rivalries, one of the underrated rivalries, I would say, the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss and Mississippi State are two top 20 teams.
yeah, Ole Miss is another team that we're not really talking about.
Yeah.
But they're playing good football. They beat Kentucky. They took care of business this week against Vanderbilt. So another solid season. A year after they lose Matt Corral to Carolina. What a mess that is
I
in
feel bad
Charlotte.
for him.
But Mississippi State, they had a big win this week over Arkansas, who's fallen off a cliff. So, the SEC is strong this year. I mean, now the thing about Tennessee is not only do they have to play Alabama this week, but they also have. I mean, their schedule the rest of the way is it's daunting. They have Alabama this week, then they play UT Martin. All right, whoop-de-doo. Then they play Kentucky at home. Okay.
That should be interesting.
Then they go to Georgia. That could be a hell of a battle. Then they play Missouri. So, like, this game is big. Alabama, Tennessee.
That's why we won the game day.
Yeah, but Tennessee, like, there's still a bigger game on their schedule, and that's Kentucky, and that's Georgia, who they play on the road. So
and going into Georgia,
here's the problem. Okay, if you want to break through in the SEC this year,
that's one of the toughest divisions. You got to beat Georgia.
If you want to break through in the SEC, you have to beat Alabama and you got to beat Georgia. And sometimes you play them, and if you're Tennessee, who's been trying to break through for years, this might be the year to do it. They have a top 10 team. They beat Georgia in 2016. They beat Florida in 2016 as well. They nearly took down Texas A&M. Like, Tennessee is now back in the national spotlight. Give Josh Heupel credit. Give Hendon Hooker credit. Give the running game a lot of credit. Their defense manned up against LSU last week. So,
going into this season, I did not see Tennessee being a top 10 team.
No, I don't think anybody did. Because the thing about
they're one of the dark horse teams that give it 2 years, or whenever they expand the college football playoff to 12 teams, they're going to be maybe a front runner for the national championship.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I don't know if you want to go that far.
I mean, you never know, but
all right. So we've hit on
another sneaky team looking at the bottom half of the 15 and down. You got NC State, Mississippi State we just reached on, Kansas State, my best friend Ellie goes there. Syracuse, I will be at the Clemson-Syracuse game next week. Kansas at 19. Utah at 20. The Bearcats at 21. Now, Frankie, after that performance that they just had against USF, do you have them at 21 still, or would you have dropped them?
I wouldn't have dropped them, but, I mean, I think that just because you look around the top 25, Washington loses, and then number 25, and I guess 20. Well,
I mean, you
hold
got
on.
23 is
I don't
Kentucky.
know if I would have moved them up 3 spots,
I
but
would have.
I mean,
Put
you're
them
gonna
at
have that
25.
you're gonna have that kind of game though, Anthony, and that
Yeah.
was just the game the Bearcats played on Saturday.
Now you got
Obviously,
James Madison
excuse
at
me.
25.
How about that?
Who would have thought? A
I
small.
just think Anthony. I just think Anthony. Okay, I just think when we look at the Bearcats game on Saturday against USF, we saw Tyler Scott go down. We saw another receiver go down for the Bearcats. They were decimated by injuries. Their best defensive player was playing hurt. USF's running game is so unique because they make guys miss. Bearcats
Yeah.
had trouble tackling. And for whatever reason, the Bulls have been a struggle for the Bearcats, even though they shouldn't be. The Bearcats managed to eke out the win. Thank goodness to Javon Hicks for that 4th down stop late in the game.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
would
a
have
wake-up call
never.
that every team in the American is gonna give Cincinnati its best shot, and USF did that on Saturday.
Now USF are being a 1-5 team. I don't know what it is. They play bad against good, easy win opponents, but they play good against teams like Florida,
Yeah,
Cincy. Those were 2 games we should have won.
I'll give them credit because Jeff
Now,
Scott said this. Jeff Scott said this throughout the week that they needed to execute better in the first half, and to their credit, they did.
mm, now, if you go back and look at the Florida game, the should have won ECU and should have beat Cincy. We could easily be a 3-3 team right now.
Yeah, but that just shows you where the program is. I mean,
And
this is a
Jeff
program that
Scott,
still has a lot of stability issues, right? A lot of
mhm.
stability issues. Okay.
Jeff
And
Scott's like, I had faith for him. I really did. I had strong faith, and he's letting USF down. Four wins through 3 years,
yeah, that's not going to get done.
and
I mean, we
it
know
was
it's not going to get
Howard, the
done.
Citadel, Temple, and then someone else. But it just something has to change. It's maybe a coaching change, or I don't know. But Jeff Scott, he's not the guy. And I know everyone on USF's Twitter, all this is saying fire Scott, fire Scott, fire Scott. But sometimes you also got to look at it. It's also the offensive coordinator's fault, defensive coordinator. It's not always Jeff Scott's problem. The players just got to execute also.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right, so let's look ahead to this week, college football week 7. A lot of great games on the docket.
oh yeah,
Obviously Alabama, Tennessee
give
leading
me
the way.
Tennessee.
College game day there, 3:30 kick on CBS. I mean, the line on the game is Alabama -7.5, over under 65 and
Of
a
course.
half. I mean, that is going to be an unbelievable atmosphere. Might be the biggest game in the state of Tennessee since 1999. That
Jeez.
was Super Bowl 34 that the Tennessee Titans played in against the LA Rams
Did they
and
win?
lost by 1 yard.
I remember that. I remember seeing the highlights for that game.
The Super Bowl?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was one of the best
but
Super Bowls that the NFL has had. So my thing, Anthony, is um, I think this game,
for Tennessee,
if Bryce Young plays, I
if
don't
Bryce
know
Young
about
plays,
Tennessee.
Alabama wins. But if
Alabama's coming off a shaky win over Texas A&M. But one of my sister's roommate, Kat, she said that Nick Saban's going to work the guys hard in practice this week, and I have no doubt that they will.
It's Nick
So
Saban
that
for crying out loud. Like, I saw a video from him. He said there was one time practice was so bad he restarted it from the beginning. The beginning with stretches and everything. And Nick Saban's one of the most winningest head coaches in college football history. Couldn't win in the NFL though, but in college football history, he's one of the biggest winning head coaches there is. Point blank said and done.
yeah, and I mean he lives for these kind of games. So if
Yeah.
Bryce Young plays, I
And,
think Alabama wins convincingly. If he doesn't play,
but if
Tennessee's
Bryce
going to
Young
choose.
doesn't, Tennessee has a good chance
Yeah.
either way.
All right, so we got that. We've got Penn State and Michigan. You know, I'll say this
You know,
about Michigan.
give
Everybody's
me
talking about how great Ohio State is. Michigan is quietly just dominating opponents.
Yeah.
They're running the ball well. Blake Corum had over 200 yards last week
And
in
look at it
Indiana. And I'll
look
tell
at
you
it like
this, Anthony. I'll tell you this. Michigan has a quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, who is playing some good football.
He's playing great football, and typically going out
9
saying
touchdowns and 1 pick through the first 6 games. Blake Corum 3 straight 100-yard rushing games. So this is a Michigan offense that may not be as one-dimensional as we've seen in years past.
Now, looking at it like this, Michigan has Penn State. They got Penn State this week. Then you got a great rivalry, Michigan State. I always root for Michigan State, but Michigan State's not doing so hot this year, so it's gonna be hard to root for them. And Michigan State had, I forgot who they play this week, but it's probably
played
gonna be
Ohio State and got smoked. I mean,
Oh,
Michigan State they're falling off a cliff real fast.
They are.
Auburn and Ole Miss. Excuse me.
But for
that could
give
be
me Michigan.
that could get interesting.
Auburn and Ole Miss.
Let's see what else we have.
Oklahoma
State TCU, a battle of unbeatens in the Big 12, 3:30 on ABC. NC State Syracuse. I mean, no one's talking about Syracuse in the ACC. They're 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
This is about as good as they were in 2018, and Clemson's got him next week.
I'll be at that game.
Yes, you will. Mississippi State, Kentucky could be interesting. Kentucky's lost 2 straight. Will Rogers has 22 touchdown passes on the season for the Bulldogs. And then USC and Utah. USC struggled a little bit last
we like. The USC we like.
Well, here's the thing, Anthony. They won last week, but it was their ground game that did it because Caleb Williams struggled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
USC won.
I mean, and Utah,
Utah lost.
Yeah, that's a team that came into the season though with high expectations, and they have just simply not lived up to them. I mean, that's their second loss. They're now 4-2. I mean, the best they can do at this point is repeat as Pac-12 champions, which I mean they could do that. Pac-12 is not outside of USC. It's not that tough. I expect.
Coors Light wants to keep your chores
I am
light.
sorry.
Enter now for a chance to win a whole season of free.
I don't know where these ads keep popping up from, but okay. Anyway, any final thoughts, Anthony, before we close?
I expect another great week of football. Hopefully, I have a feeling Clemson will get the win in FSU. They played well last year against FSU. Close game. But Clemson got the win. They got FSU this week. Clemson returning, like I said before, they're one of the most fully healthy teams, if that makes sense, on both sides of the ball. So I expect a really good game. Clemson wins by 2 touchdowns, but I expect a good game. DJ has a great, astonishing game. Keeps proving the haters wrong. And I hope for a really good game, and then...
All right. Fair enough. All right. That's going to do it for us. He's Anthony Fiorentino. I'm Alex Frank. You know me as Frankie. This has been the Perfect Season Podcast College Edition. Back tomorrow with Alex and maybe Leon for our Wednesday. Okay, back Wednesday
I have a work event.
Okay, so back Wednesday with you, Alex, and Leon for our NFL Week 5 recap. Look ahead to Week 6. I mean, the Week 6 lineup of games is unbelievably
good. Thursday night football.
Well, we can forget about that game. All right.
And a jersey reveal. Jersey reveal.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. He's Anthony. I'm Frankie. Thanks for listening.